We're very lucky to have with us live in the studios this morning, once again, Tom Carpenter, who is Executive Director of Hanford Challenge. Start out, if you would. You formerly worked at the Government Accountability Project, and now you are the Executive Director of Hanford Challenge. Tell us about Hanford Challenge.
Well, Hanford is a mess. We have not benefited from the Bush administration's oversight of the cleanup. They put in place early in the administration something called accelerated cleanup of the Hanford site. So cleanup that was going to take 50 to 100 years, suddenly they were trying to compact into a 20-year period and save money doing it. Well, okay, look behind the curtain on that one, and what you find is they're not planning to do a lot of cleanup. They weren't planning to go after the groundwater contamination. Well, Hanford has 200 square miles of contaminated groundwater below the site there, and that is spreading over time because the contaminants in the soil are leaking at a constant rate into the groundwater. There's actually a slowdown in cleaning up some of the worst at Hanford, which is the waste. High-level nuclear waste in these underground tanks. So Hanford has 177 million-gallon tanks buried beneath the soil, and these tanks were the recipient of some of the high-level radioactive waste that came from the reprocessing of nuclear fuel. This is probably the most dangerous stuff on the planet ever. Very, very small quantities of this waste. And it's been said that a Dixie cup full of this waste in a crowded restaurant, everyone would be dead in the restaurant inside of an hour. Even the amount that would fit on the leg of a fruit fly is considered a problem dose, and that's happened at Hanford. Fruit flies have landed on contaminated materials and then flown off to go to the lunchroom and deposit contamination on food and on tables and whatnot, and they've had to evacuate a 20-acre area at the Hanford site because of hot fruit flies and wasps. So this waste in these tanks is very dangerous in small quantities, and it has another feature, which is it's dangerous for very, very long periods of time. And the great bulk of it is dangerous for hundreds of years by volume, but it doesn't matter because the volumes are so huge, 55 million gallons in these tanks. So even if you have 5 pounds of plutonium, that stuff is dangerous for 250,000 years. Some elements are dangerous for millions of years. So you've got a situation where you have to take these wastes and somehow keep them away from the living environment for many years. And the plan is to pump these tanks out. They were never meant to hold waste for very long, and yet they're now being used as permanent repositories practically. So there has been no plan B for getting the waste out of the tanks. Now there is a facility being constructed next to the tanks called a glass plant or a vitrification facility, but that's not going to open now until 2019, and the tanks probably aren't going to last that long. Some of those tanks will likely fail between now and then. So Hanford's between a rock and a hard place, and if they hurry up and try to get waste out of the leaky tanks, what's happened is last year they had a spill of 100 gallons of nuclear waste onto the soil at Hanford because a pump failed. The hot waste went up a fresh water line, spilled out onto the ground. Amazingly, Hanford officials didn't notice for over 12 hours that this had happened, even though it was a very high radiation area. There were, chemical vapors emanating from these wastes. They didn't have an industrial hygienist present to measure chemicals. So the workers who were nearby this waste, they were getting, exposures, and nobody knew it. And nobody knows what they got exposed to, and now a lot of them are very sick. So this is kind of a typical, day in the life of Hanford. It's not like that every day, but in the course of a year, you've got numerous events where people are exposed to, radioactive cesium or chemicals. Stuff is going into the river at a constant rate. Carbon tetrachloride is buried in some of the grounds out there, and It's just beyond belief, really, how complicated and maddening this cleanup is. So workers are again, they're in contact with this stuff on a constant basis and need that good protection for their own health and safety, but also to be able to talk about some of the concerns about the environmental contamination going on or the shortcuts that are being taken. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at.